Good evening, and welcome to the Putnam Valley Board of Education Work/Business Meeting of March 5th, 2020. Please stand and join me as we salute our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we begin, I'd like to make a resolution to approve the minutes of the business meeting of February 13th, 2020.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
I abstain. I wasn't there, so.
Oh, I forgot the abstain and the no. Okay. We have a lengthy set of presentations today, so we are going to, if it is okay with the rest of the board, rearrange the order and start with number 1 under new business action. So if I can please ask, and do I have to ask for a contribution on new business first, public contribution? Mm-hmm. Yes. So is there any contribution on any of the agenda items? I know this is a little confusing. Bear with me, people. So, Mr. Farrar, can you please read number 1?
Resolved on the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Olivia Roth be granted tenure in the area of elementary education and special education at the Putnam Valley Central School District effective April 4th, 2020.
Second.
Questions or comments?
So I know Olivia Roth began with us working a part-time role and quickly moved into a full-time capacity, which is why she has a unique tenure date, which brings her here. So although she's being recommended for tenure this evening, we'll again have an opportunity to sort of celebrate this with the other recipients next month, but we wanted to make sure that individuals understood. And just a few things about Olivia. I know she served in several different roles in our school district. Most recently, she was coaxed or strong-armed by myself and a few others out of the elementary school to fill a need in the out of the elementary school to fill a need in the middle school that we thought was really essential for our program. And I have to say, and given the fact that she has all of her 6th grade colleagues here next to her, that her and her co-teacher have done a fantastic job in that transition. I know maybe it wasn't the most exciting thing in the world when we approached her about it, but she's truly come through with flying colors and impressed all. So with that noted, I'm going to defer to Dr. Doherty.
So Olivia, just when she first came to us, she'd been teaching for a couple of years, and I will say she quickly immersed herself in the New York standards. She's always referring back to standards and how you should really scaffold our New York State standards in order to meet the needs of all of the students. And as a special educator, she is always advocating for her students in just in a great way in order to meet whether it's their individualized reading needs or math needs. She really just has truly immersed herself into the Putnam Valley culture, and she is always, you can walk into her classroom on any given day and see either a station teaching lesson where you really use small group instruction in order to meet the needs of all learners. She also, I just jotted down some notes here, really, she finds such a great way to push students to reach their maximum potential, but she does it in a way that is incredibly kind, thoughtful, and it's always a push and pull balance. And I think that she really has such high expectations for every single student. And when I think of Joe's, $1 million question, Olivia is somebody who really exemplifies and who this district in Putnam Valley should be so privileged and honored to have a teacher like her. And I can sincerely say that, and thank you for everything you do. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we're going to embarrass you and ask you to come up and take that. And I think receiving tenure is a family affair, So I understand Olivia's family's here, so we're going to ask them to stand up so we can thank them for giving us her.
If you guys want to walk through the gauntlet and shake hands.
Okay, so obviously, everybody is welcome to stay for the entire board meeting. We are talking about some very important and crucial subjects this evening. And I guess, Dr. Luff, why don't you introduce the first one?
Well, the first one of those important and crucial things that we're going to speak about tonight, that was a good lead-in, right, Dave? Is our internal auditor's report. So I would invite Mr. David Moran from Acume Partners. Thank you.
Hard act to follow, but
Nobody was singing, though, today.
no, that's true. Whoop, hello, is this on? Testing, can you hear? Okay, all right, good.
Great.
Tonight, we're presenting the annual risk assessment update and recommended area for audit. It's required by law that each year this be done, and what we do is, this is not the actual audit. We are updating where we were with the, okay. Well, that's interesting. Look at this. Hello, testing.
Come on, Dan. Dan.
Do we have? It worked fine a moment ago, didn't it? Well, all right, I can just tell you what it is. Oh, thank you. Which one? Got it. All right, we're good. The process itself, as you can see on the screen behind me, involves talking to all the critical district staff and evaluating the critical areas such as information technology and looking at the necessary board policies, audit reports, and what have you. And we're doing this to determine if there have been any significant changes to the control environment that need to be addressed. And we're confirming our understanding of the key internal control processes. We update our risk matrix and we summarize our risk assessment in the report that has been submitted to the audit committee and is being presented to the board. Definition of risk, because we often get asked this question about what is a risk, and the definition that we have is it's defined as the internal and external factors that threaten the achievement of the district's missions, goals, and objectives. Now, an area can be rated high because it lacks sufficient controls, policies, procedures, and things like that for the key processes. But the important point is some areas will always have a high or a medium risk because of the nature of the function. If you have a multi-million-dollar payroll, it's going to be very difficult for you not to have a medium or a high rating for that because of the dollars that are flowing through it and how well they are controlled and how well you have guaranteed that they're and reduced to the maximum the ability for an embezzlement or something of that type. So that's what it really comes down to, and that's the point I want to make. In the latter cases, you can see it means that the area requires a high degree of process monitoring with very specific controls, policies, procedures, and experienced staff to perform the duties. Now, the good news here is that when we look at the next slide, there are no areas that we rated with a high risk. In fact, the district is doing a very good job with a very competent staff in such that two of the areas, as you can see, last year and again this year, were rated low. Within the three areas of low, medium, and high, we use points. We have 16 different factors, and I'm not going to go into all the math. It's really exciting. And, but I will tell you that looking at the right, you'll see that the medium, let's take budget financial and financial accounting. This year, medium, last year, medium, and there was no change in the numbers. And that's about as good as it's going to get because it's gotten to a point now where it's pretty stabilized. So as you can see, the only two areas that actually even increased at all were down at the bottom. That was information technology and student services. In the case of information technology, we, like the schools, have to stay current with what's happening in the real environment. So we have now recalibrated the risk in information technology to compensate for cybersecurity, a word that didn't even exist 5 years ago. All right, and that's why it came up 1 point. That's all it did, but it did go up. All right, And in the student services, it was a similar type of situation. So that's how it works. So having said that, and knowing that you're always asking how do we rank with all the other districts, I would say you're ranking very well, all right? And the fact of the matter is that, you know, nothing is high, this is good. So then, when we looked at the next area to review, we've been through all of the areas, because this thing started with the laws of 2005, so it's been a few years that we've been doing this. And now we're coming back and revisiting some of the other areas in the cycle, and the one that we're recommending for this year is purchasing and accounts payable, another area with a lot of funding and payments flowing through it. And it has a very prescribed methodology that we want to test to make certain that is being observed. So that's the area for recommended area for this year's audit. And we've already told the audit committee we have a tentative date already assigned for it. Any questions?
So this has been sent to the audit committee. Have they met yet?
Yes, I'm gonna,
Okay, good. Got it. Any other questions?
I'm not offended.
Clear and concise report.
All right.
Just,
Thank
can I
you.
clarify something real quick? I'm sorry. Can you go back to the, it may be that our slides are not updated, so I just want to confirm. The risk assessment update results slide? If you could go back to that one real quick, I just want to confirm something.
Was that the matrix?
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
In the
No.
original set of
Oh.
slides, our budget said increase. in-
You're right.
Correct, yeah, and I just
yes,
wanna confirm.
That's right, that's right.
Okay.
And I caught it, but unfortunately, Maureen couldn't be with us, so
Okay.
it didn't get in.
So that's no change?
Yeah, what you see this is the
Okay,
revised one.
perfect.
Yes,
Okay, thank you so much.
right.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much. So now I want to recognize Ms. Barb Parmalee, the chairperson of the audit committee.
Okay, so the audit committee met. I have to thank Dave and Sharon for their work on doing the risk assessment. I'd like to thank Jill Figuerella because she does an amazing job. And in fact, I kind of tried to ignore her during the meeting and ask them about how does when they make recommendations of things that could be improved, how quickly do we make those changes? And Sharon said they make them before they even write the report. Like our business office really wants to know how to do things better, and if they have a suggestion for how to do things better, more efficiently, our district office staff does that right away. So I'd also like to thank Tom Sawyer. He's a member of the committee that came tonight. So the Acune Partners recommended that we do purchasing and accounts payable. It's been 7 years since that was done, so this is a good time to redo it. There's a lot of money that flows through that account. It's good. You don't want to push it farther than that. We also discussed future areas that we'd like to see assessed, especially ones that haven't been done for 10 or more years. Keeping in mind that priorities change and that we want the audit committee and our auditors to remain flexible and focused on the current and future needs of the district. So hopefully they'll come back they're coming in April to do this audit, and hopefully they're coming back in the fall to do the next audit. We'll see what their risk assessment says at that time. So we support their recommendation.
Okay. Any questions for anybody else? All right. Moving right along.
You got it. So now I'm going to invite up 3 individuals who are certainly not strangers to the board. But the exciting part about this evening is this will be the last time that they are presenting to us before we have backhoes and equipment and fencing and cranes and all that other exciting stuff that we're looking forward to. So welcome Walt Hauser, Teresa May from KG&D, and Kevin Sawyer from Triton Construction to the podium. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having us. We're actually here to talk about a future need of the audit committee. We're pleased to be back in front of you, and tonight we're here to make a recommendation regarding the bid results for the capital project. So we want to talk a little bit about the process. what we got in terms of bid results and the next steps. So we were here in December talking about budget, if you remember. And since our last visit, we've issued the project for bid, we've received SCD approval, and taken bid results and reviewed all the apparent low bidders. So
8 weeks.
the good news is we've got base bids on budget, and we got a great turnout during the bidding process. And Jeremy just told the quick story in the facilities committee meeting, but we received bids at 4 o'clock on February 19th, and at 1:45 my phone rings and it's Jeremy. And he says, Dave and I are sitting here and we have one bid. What are we gonna do? Oh no. And as you can see, we ended up with 84 total bids for the project. It's a little bit skewed. There are 14 contracts we're recommending awards, so there were multiple contractors that bid on different contracts, but we had 25 distinct contractors, and from our perspective, it was a great turnout. We got excellent coverage on every contract, and we met with all the low bidders. We performed a scope review with them to review their proposal, their qualifications, their understanding of the project, and we're pleased to recommend tonight an award of a base bid of $11.99 million plus $156,000 in alternates. So that compares to a $12 million estimate that was in the budget established in 2018, and the base bids are slightly under, plus the alternates. So we have a great result on the project, and we're really excited to move forward. If you remember our discussion in December, we talked about escalating construction costs, we saw some regional increases in bid results, and we went through a process to manage that and make sure we had a project that was awardable. So we have some alternates tonight that we're recommending. We've got improvements at the elementary school auditorium, so multi-purpose space, refinishing the stage, refinishing the stepped seating area. And then the $130,000 at the wellness center is actually the turf. We priced it as an alternate because there were some options of how to purchase that, whether or not on a state contract or through the bidding. If you remember, there are some other alternates we separated out as part of the middle school work that we're not recommending to award tonight. Those have to do with the central classroom core spaces, the nurses suite, the relocated guidance offices, and some toilet renovations. We think at this time right now, we'd like to reserve award of those. We've talked to all the low bidders. They're willing to maintain their prices for an extended period of time that may give us the option to award those at a later date. But right now, we want to maintain a healthy contingency, at least through the most critical part of the project, which is the demolition at the middle school, where we take the building apart, get out of the ground, and until we're out of the ground with the wellness center. Those are super critical phases, but we're optimistic that we'll be able to award some of those alternates at a later date and have a pathway to complete all of the work of the project. So I'm back with more graphs. Last time we were here, we talked about escalating costs, and you can see that December 2019, we had a spike. Our estimates show that our costs were projecting above our budget. Well, we went through the corrective process. We did some value engineering. Remember, we talked about changing some of the fit and finish within inside the space, but no wholesale changes. We made the exterior wall of the wellness center more economical, and then we introduced some alternates to get us on budget. Well, the long and short is that process worked, and it got us right back to where we needed to be. So we're very excited about that. So the recommendation tonight, you have 2 recommendations, one from KG&D, one from Triton Construction, I believe identical, with regard to award. It's a little bit complicated. We have quite a few contracts, 14 contracts. Essentially, the Wick's law, multiple primes at each building, plus we have a separate window contractor at the middle school, and we took a combined bid for general construction at the high school and middle school. So there's a lot there. These are all contractors we've worked with before. We're comfortable that they understand the project, that they're well qualified, and in fact, some of these contractors have been involved in capital projects on your campus, including some of the contractors for the wellness center were involved with the construction of the high school. So we're pleased that there's some familiarity, and they were excited to return to work for Putnam Valley. So you have both those recommendations in front of you. We're very confident with this group of contractors. So our next steps, if the board elects to move forward tonight, we'll formalize contracts, and then we'll commence the pre-construction activities. So essentially, that's getting your paperwork in order. Contractors will start to engage subcontractors and prepare paperwork, which is called submittals to us. So all the design documentation for steel and all the materials that come to the building, come to the construction site. And then in very short order, you're going to start to see some activity on the campus. And maybe, Kevin, you want to talk about what to expect in the upcoming weeks.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. So this is a really exciting night. Certainly for me, I hope it is for you too, because now we've finished all this talking about doing this project, and we're actually going to start doing this project, right? So it is real now. Assuming that the board makes the award of all these contracts, we're looking very forward to getting started with physical construction on the site. It's real, all right? So I wanted to talk a little bit about some next steps. Assuming the board makes the awards tonight, there are a few things that contractors have to do before they can physically work on the site. We have to get a notice to proceed out to them, which we will do tomorrow morning. Then they have to get their bonds and insurances put in place. They have to get some safety paperwork put in place. And then you're going to start seeing fencing go up. The roadway go in the front, by the front entranceway to access the parking area that's going to be at the old practice football field. So you're going to see fencing go up in the front of the middle school in the parking lot there where the new addition is going to go. The first task that we're going to need to do is we're going to have to start relocating a lot of the underground utilities that are out there. Some of them we'll have to take care of during perhaps your spring break, because they might require some shutdowns, and we want to make sure we have enough time to address any issues with shutdowns. So we're planning to that end. After we get all the underground relocated, then you're going to start to see some physical construction happening, foundations and structural steel, and then exterior wall, windows, and things of that nature. Just to remind everybody the timeline, the anticipated construction completion date for the middle school work, which consists of the kitchen, cafetorium, the new addition area, which now spreads out that space, is for September 1. It is an aggressive schedule, but we know we can make it. And the contractor has already told me he's ready to work 10 or 12 hours a day to make sure that we get that taken care of. So we're really, really excited about moving forward. Also, I might add that Triton will have now a full-time on-site construction manager starting in about a week. And he will be placed somewhere in one of the buildings here to help in the communication with the school districts, with the day-to-day construction operations, to make sure everybody understands what we're doing. And also coordination of the contractors to make sure everybody's doing it safely. Construction, as its very nature, is complex. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of people involved. But I want everybody in the community and the board to know that safety is our #1 priority, both for the safety of the students and the faculty that are working in the buildings around us, but also for the safety of the workers that are on site. So there will be very specific protocols that will be followed to make sure that we identify contractors as contractors, including hard hats and high visibility shirts or vests and proper PPE, personal protective equipment, as well as ID badges. We said earlier in the committee, in the construction committee, that in the event that there is anybody that you don't know inside your building for any reason, you follow your protocols for removing that person from the building. There will be no construction employees in any of your buildings at any time during school unless they are specifically authorized by the school district and escorted by somebody from Triton Construction. So I want to make that very clear, all right? The contractors, most of them, as Walter had mentioned, they do this kind of work in schools all the time. They get it. They understand what the expectations are that we have. They understand the sensitivities of the safety in the school atmosphere right now. And they do pretty well to to stay in line for us. So, but if there's ever any issue, you do whatever protocol that you need to do to make sure that your buildings remain safe. Okay? So with that, thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Actually, I think my next question is more for Walter. I have a question about some of the numbers. I'm just probably reading them wrong. I am not the numbers person on this board. We're awarding, at one slide said the award amount was $11,992,997, which was about 28,000 or so less than the budgeted amount, which was 12 million. Yeah, I did the math with pencil.
Yeah.
12,021,000. But then later, bid award was 12,140,000, like a different number.
Yep.
Explain.
No, that's a good question. So the 11,000,009 number is the sum total of all the base bid work.
Okay.
So we had what we call a base bid contract. And then on top of that, we had options for alternates. So things that could be added to the base bid. So our sum total award is the 11,900 plus the 156.
Oh, that's right,
Yep.
okay. And then you said there are some bids you're not awarding now. Are those numbers in here?
So
or-
there are alternate proposals attached with the contracts at the middle school to include some renovations in what we call the central core areas. So the nurse suite, bathrooms downstairs, and then the all-room space upstairs. Right now, we're recommending not to award those because we think it would impinge a little too much on the construction contingency that's available and budgeted right now. But we've talked to the contractors, and they're willing to hold those numbers for a period of time so that in the event we get through the construction and the funds are available in the contingency, we could comfortably make award of those alternates at a later date to the contractors you already have engaged. And those alternates are competitively bid right now. And we've looked at the configuration of alternates, and if you award them at a later date, your low bidders would remain your low bidders. So it wouldn't affect the outcome of who the apparent low bidders are.
So just for the board's awareness, all of that information, including all of the responses for bids, is included on the attachment on board docs. So you can see each individual vendor and what they bid, as well as the bids for the remaining alternates if we were to decide to award them for next summer.
So those were in the plan, but because we were being cautious in possible overruns and anywhere for contingency, those are things just holding off.
Correct. They're in the drawings. They're permitted by SED. They're basically shovel ready. So at any point you want to make that award, and we make a recommendation that the funds are we're beyond a point of risk with the contingency that we can make it.
And there's because we're doing significant renovations in the building, there's no ADA issues with not touching those bathrooms?
Nope. We're okay to not do them right now. We are renovating bathrooms. We're creating new bathrooms in the middle school as part of the cafeteria addition area work. So the bathrooms that are there are coming out, creating 2 new sets of brand new bathrooms that are ADA compliant. We're also creating a new bathroom in the girls' locker room that's ADA compliant. So we are upgrading. There is not a mandatory requirement to upgrade everything in the building. It's just what you touch.
I just want to point out, although one of the reasons for waiting to award or to explore awarding that alternate is to buy some time and to get a better sense of our financial status. The other piece is we have serious concerns about adding more work to the middle school with the expectation of it being completed this summer. So we know that we're already on a tight timeline to add in another huge section of the building, which requires plumbing and electric and HVAC and general contractors' work. There's definitely some fear of that we may be asking too much to get done in such a short period of time. And by holding off for some time, getting a better sense of our financials, it also provides us the opportunity to award that work the following summer, which should actually make the lives of the general contractors and the tradespeople a little bit easier as well.
And SED approval would already have been awarded for those alternates?
It's already
And the
approved.
bid process, they're already in place?
Yep. So the question of permitting and the question of competitive bidding is already done.
Okay. This is really happening?
Get ready.
Any other questions?
This Ms. Denike is scheduling the groundbreaking ceremony. She's working on it as we speak.
Okay.
And Dave's going to work on a communication to the community. Right, Dave?
I do want to mention that when you came up, again, we're so excited about what an exciting night. I looked over at Dave's fiddle. He's the only one that doesn't look quite as excited as the rest of us. I think worried, panicked, and nervous are some words that might come into mind. I know.
There was a list of things we were waiting on until after the bid process. Now, all of a sudden, there's a huge list of to-do things now that that process is over.
All right, so we'll be seeing you guys with hard hats on.
Very excited. Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Thanks.
All right, we just talked about capital budgets and funding. Why don't we talk about program
You got it.
budgets?
All right, so our next agenda item will be budget presentations, both for our elementary school and our high school. I'm waiting to see which one of the two pops up on the screen first, so I know which one to introduce. All right, elementary school will go first. So we'll welcome Miss Margaret Podesta to the podium to give us an overview of the elementary school budget for next year. Thank you.
I love when everybody works and plays well together.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Margaret Podesta, principal of the elementary school, and I just have a brief overview tonight of the budget and the plan for next year as we look at it together. Just going over our current goals, keeping us all on the same page. Number one, celebrating and continuing our student progress in all academic areas. I'm just so proud of our students and our staff with all the great headways we've made over recent years and the progress our students are making in all content areas. And of course, this includes support and enrichment for all students considering specific learning needs, including our ELA and math challenge, which have been built into our iBlock schedule throughout the week. Mondays for math and Fridays for ELA. We have an increased and improved use of data in order to design individualized instruction. Our data team meets quarterly, and we have become much more skilled at talking about data, looking at student data, and designing instruction around it. Always looking at the whole child, but knowing how to use that information better than we have before. Continued support of our growing ENL program. We have more children speaking a different language at home. We have a wonderful new ENL teacher, Mr. Hogan, who's just doing a fabulous job in our building and just helping in many ways, translating and looking at data together, looking at materials, and we're doing very well. Culturally responsive classrooms, we're looking at that with Ms. Mistretta and looking at the list of things that are kind of recommended for culturally responsive classrooms. We feel very good about where we are and always willing to grow. And of course, also with Ms. Mistretta, the innovative classroom support, everything from approaches to choice in the classroom, different ways children are seating, sitting in the classroom, furniture, but also even how they're approaching homework and problem-based learning. Support of our wonderful Character Ed and Diversity Committee, which brings so much to our school. It's really a pillar of our building, and that ties in with our Kids of Character Club as well. We are still learning about the Yale ruler model. It is part of our conversation in our classroom, and I would say for us, the highlight of it is how the vocabulary of emotions ties into our literacy, ties into our classroom conversations, and really ties into our discipline as well as we talk about good choices and choices we won't make again. Further development with makerspace and technology, and we are excited about this capital project for the science lab. And of course, the school-wide sustainability theme and the new sustainability fair that's happening every year at the elementary school. And that's when we used to have snow. That's a beautiful picture of our beautiful school. So now we'll get into some numbers, just looking at our enrollment. You can see the changes K through 4 as we go through the years. Our classes are not the size of the classes in the high school right now, but that's common around districts in this area. Our bigger class is in 4th grade. going to fifth grade quickly, and you can see that that's the big number there, the minus 27, just losing a section of fourth grade for us. Overall, we're going what we think is about 531 now to about 502 next year. But our kindergarten is an estimate. Right now, we do have 98 registrants, which is a nice high number. I'm saying we could have a kindergarten class of 100. Some of these children might not come in September, and we could get 10 or 15 more. We're just not sure. Okay, so these are our current class sizes. You can see K, 1, 2, 3, and 4 there, all somewhere around 20. We have the self-contained class K3 with 7 children, self-contained 2-4 in our New Horizons program with 6, and we do have a K1 Achieve this year full day with 4 children. Looking at the projections for next year, we're looking at 5 sections of every grade level with the numbers that are posted up here, and just looking and being fiscally responsible, you could look at 4 sections of grade 2 with 23 students instead of 5 with 18. This, of course, is not loudly supported by the teachers, of course, and we do have children with different academic and behavioral needs, of course, in every grade level. But this is the point of discussion in my elementary budget presentation, just looking at the number of sections going into grade 2. And then kindergarten is always an estimate at this point in the year because we're not sure how many students will actually start school in September. In our soundproof band room here. And then just upcoming staff changes. We do have 2 general education teachers who happen to be married to each other retiring at the end of the year. We are watching incoming kindergarten enrollment. We are watching class size in sections moving from first grade to second grade, and that's not an easy decision. We want to put a lot of thought into that. And just a change for us that has affected us for the past 5 years is this large class of fourth graders, current fourth graders, where we have adjusted our master schedule with specials times and just rotating specials with this class and moving a teacher every year, because once you have an extra section, it does affect, it's like a ripple effect through the year. And they're a great group, but that's a change for our building. And then just, I put specials there because depending on the number of class sections that we have, the number of self-contained special education classes we have, that does affect the specials teacher schedule, meaning gym, art, music, technology, and how they are scheduled in and how full their caseload gets. And just looking an overall picture of the PVES staffing, the administration, classroom teachers with 1 special education teacher at every grade level in the collaborative classroom. We have our math AIS teacher, 2 reading AIS teachers, a full-time ENL teacher, 2 school psychologists. We have a counselor, Mrs. Kilduff is with us much of the week this year. We have speech 2.4, a full-time nurse, and we have the specialists, which I'll talk about in just a second, but we also have the ELA coordinator position, math instructional, and I guess both instructional specialist positions. The reason I have grade 2 in pink, if you want to talk about this tonight or at some point, it would be 4 if we made the classes a little larger in second grade. Some rock climbing, and then looking at our specialists right now, the way the schedule works, we have 1.8 physical education. One of the phys ed teachers is shared with the middle school, and this has been going on for a couple of years. It works with our schedule as it is now. We have 0.8 art, and we have our art teacher who's also general ed certified, does 0.2 of AIS math support. We have 0.8 technology, 0.8 music with our music teacher also teaching band for 0.2, and 1.0 band and instrumental teacher, and she shares her day between the elementary and middle school. Some innovative furniture in many of our classrooms. And just our continued goals, I always appreciate the opportunity for our kinder camp, which has been so successful over these past few years. Our Science Maker Fair is coming up March 18th for our fourth graders. And for the second year in a row, we'll be taking 12 students to the Tri-County Science and Tech Fair at White Plains High School, and that's in April. We have the several clubs that make such a difference to our students, the Maker Club and the musical, of course, Safety Patrol, Kids of Character Club, the Oceanographers Club, the Garden Club, and many creative learning spaces, including the Outdoor Learning Center, the Maker Space, and of course our library that is very well used. And you've heard that we had a kindergarten Mandarin pilot program take place in all of our kindergarten classes this year with Miss Jessica, who you can see in this picture, work for 30 minutes with each of the 5 kindergarten classes. We did celebrate the Chinese New Year with a wonderful celebration. And Dr. Luft and Ms. Mistretta and I met at BOCES today just to talk about the future of this program and what it could look like or might look like, continuing in kindergarten and possibly with this same cohort moving to first grade. We want to involve teachers in that conversation as well, and a little bit is to be determined there, but I will say it was a very positive and team-oriented conversation. And of course, we're always being kind, safe, respectful, and responsible as part of our Character Ed motto, but here you have the first grade bulletin board. If you get a chance to see that close up, they have the pictures of every single first grader in the building on that bulletin board in the I for kind. And that's it for now, but I'll take any questions, and I thank you always for all of your support at the elementary school.
So can you go back to the second grade? Because I'd like to just talk about it a little.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we have 5 sections, that's 18 students in a section.
5 sections would be, 18. Mm-hmm.
But 4 sections would be 23? Is that what you said?
Yes. Does that work mathematically? I think
Yeah,
so.
well,
Yeah.
no, I'm trusting your
Yeah.
math, but,
It's just a smaller group, and we had several children move away this year, and I said, oh no, not a first grader, but a couple of times they were first graders. So I'm just, I'm not promoting this, I'm sharing it. And I just want to say that it's easy for our school to have 5 sections of every grade level. Schedule-wise, it's always nice to have small class sizes. We do talk very seriously as administrators about our budget as we move forward and our district's budget health as we look forward. I just want to share the numbers honestly.
in 4th grade, 5 sections, that's a change from this year. This year has 6 sections.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I certainly acknowledge our goal would be to add teachers to every grade level and reduce class sizes even further. In the ideal world, that's the way it would work, but it's just an unfortunate reality of school districts across the country, especially in New York State, with the constraints put in place with the tax levy cap and other things like that. So, what started these conversations, and obviously would be up to the board to decide how to best move forward, is the fact that we have teachers retiring. So there's an opportunity to reduce without needing to lay off teachers, and that's sort of, as I've been doing my my presentations across the buildings, that's been sort of one common theme in which I've shared in each of the buildings is it's the last thing I want to do is to have to walk in and lay off a teacher who's currently in a classroom, but our current financial status is not strong enough where if we don't take advantage of opportunities to reduce staff when possible, that layoffs are likely a reality in the very near future. So unless the state were to come through with something or the tax levy cap were to change or something of the sort were to happen, then we would be able to maintain, and I would love nothing more than to maintain the small class sizes we have. But the other side of it is to fill positions now may very well result in laying off those same teachers and more in the near future.
Dr. Left, lost my train of thought. No, the 3 retirements or 2 retirements in the elementary school?
In the elementary school, we have the 2. There's another retirement in the middle school. The middle school had already gone from 6 sections to 5 this school year. So and they're receiving the largest class size, which actually had 6 sections in the elementary school.
Right.
So in an ideal world, we would be adding a 6th section to 5th grade and filling that position as well, and that's not our intention. Our intention is to keep 5th grade at 5 sections. They're going to absorb that larger class that's coming up from the elementary school, and that's another opportunity we have to not fill the position of a retiring teacher.
Well, to just put something in,
That's actually not true. We have 5 now, so we would have to fill that position to maintain the 5.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, as a classroom teacher, like the difference between 20 students and or 18 and 23 or 20 and 25 is like, there's just not a way to explain the difference in terms of the time that you can give to each student, the focus you can give, the kinds of things you can do. So I'm always like, these are to me ideal numbers. However, I have to say, when we went to full day K and we talked about sustainability and how the district could afford full day kindergarten instead of half day, we said we want to keep K1 and 2 low. Those are our primary grades. But by 3 and 4, you're going to see classes of 24, 25. And we agreed as a district that that was the trade-off. Smaller class sizes in the very younger grades and larger as they go up and are more independent. So I'm not suggesting, I'm just saying historically we thought about this. And we knew even when we made full day K that that it was going to have a financial impact on the district.
That's 10 years ago now.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, I like these numbers, but I also understand what Jeremy's saying about there's only so much money, and there's only so much that we, can do about that. So I'd leave that for now, but know that that may have to change in the future. So.
Just to put a little historic perspective, one of the reasons, like Barbara, when you've been here a long time, you have a lot of history under your belt. And when I entered the district, the bubble grade was 180 students. And that was the grade that moved up and was the bubble grade. And there were 725 students in the elementary school when that bubble grade was in there. There weren't any more classrooms, so we can probably go back and get numbers, but we were operating with numbers of 24, 25, 26 from second grade on. So I just want to say 18 is lovely.
Yes.
But 23 is very manageable, and I could hold my head up with that. I always worry, because we've seen it happen, there's 10 new students that move into the district, and they're all in one grade. I think we saw 7th grade get 10 students in 2 weeks a couple of years ago. Kindergarten, I think, went up 20 in a summer. So we know that could happen.
It really could happen. It's hard to
Right.
predict kindergarten.
So we
Yeah.
have to sort, but it's just in terms of that entering second grade. 5 more students brings us to 24. Not 19, but still a manageable number, and one that we lived with 15 years ago. I think we have some great AIS programs in the building. We have a lot of terrific supports. I think we have to, and we're not making necessarily a decision today, we're not adopting the budget, but I think we always have to balance the ideal with the fiscal reality. But keep in mind that we've produced some really great students and done some really great programs with numbers like 23 and 24 in the past.
I was just looking back just to see the class sizes now. So if you see kindergarten, that's where they are. They're between 20 and 22. They're this year. And then looking at first grade, they have the small numbers right now, and that's why we're talking about that grade. But in general, you can see the class sizes throughout the school are like you said, they're lovely numbers. And so that's why it's up for conversation, and as Dr. Luff said, we do have 2 retirements. I don't want the teachers to think I'm promoting this, because I have taught for many years, and it's nice to have 18 kids. It really is, you know? And it's not just nice for the teacher, it's nice for the students as well. Yeah.
100%.
The specialist slide, slide 11, does that take in account the 4 sections, or is that with 5 sections? Like, would this be impacted?
It would be impacted in some way, whether it was, in fact, I think I have a meeting tomorrow just to talk about creative scheduling as far as that goes, because right now, nobody has too many free blocks. You know, they're using their blocks to teach. So if there was one less class, that would affect every specialist. It always depends too on whether the special education department depends on whether some of the self-contained have their own special or they push in, depending on the needs of the students. Yeah.
So this is with 5 right now?
Yes.
Correct. Okay, I just want to make sure that's.
So although it frees up
Actually, it's 5 and an extra. Yeah.
So although it frees up special area teachers, it doesn't free them up for a day or necessarily a period. It frees them up for a period once every so many days. So I think Margaret's meeting is to have conversations with the specials of, well, what additional supports can you provide to maybe other classroom teachers or to some of our special education programs during that extra period when it comes around during the cycle. Unfortunately, it's not enough where we can then share with another building or something like that, but I think there's really creative and meaningful things that we can have those special area teachers do that would have a direct impact on our students during those off periods when they come around.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Margaret.
Thank you very much. So now I will introduce Dr. Sandy Intrari to the microphone, and she's going to provide us with a high school budget for next school year. Thank you.
We go from talking about 5-year-olds to 18-year-olds.
Who are, there you go.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge our high school assistant principal, Mr. Matthew Mello.
So good evening, everyone. Mr. Mello and I will be giving you an overview of the high school budget. And really moving forward for the next year, we're not asking for anything new, so it's more, I'm looking at the question, what have you invested in as a board and as a community, and what has that resulted in at the high school? First, just looking at a quick enrollment overview over the past 4 or 5 years, we see that in 2016-17, the high school was at 588, and it's kind of gone a little bit up and down, and finally, coming up, it's starting to make a little bit of a dip, which we anticipate about 549 students. But as you mentioned with the elementary school, we could have students move in over the summer, exchange students, different things. So we're going to be very close to what we have been the past few years. You could see in grade 11, which is currently our grade 10, that's a large class of 156. So that still is impacting the high school as far as staffing. It's not until they graduate in a couple of years that then you will see the numbers start to go down. As always, as I brought this in last year, again, just a little bit of the overview, where the International Baccalaureate program is really our roof and encompasses everything that we're doing, with social emotional learning being the foundation that we're building upon. The first focus on instruction. How do we continue to academically challenge students at our school? What have you invested in as a board, and where are we today? So one big change, though, that we do want to make to challenge students is a change in social studies, and that will require some new resources for the 9th grade, but I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Mello and let him explain a little bit about why this change is taking place and what we plan on doing.
Hi, how's everyone doing tonight?
Good.
All right, this is really exciting stuff. A lot of the changes that we have going on stem from what we were doing in 11th grade with the move to IB, and then looking at changes that have happened over the last couple of years in the AP History courses. So AP History, we've typically had AP World History in 10th grade, and then AP U.S. History in 11th grade. But you can see History of the Americas, the IB course, and World Topics in 11th and 12th grade. It's kind of like a 2-year sequence for these students. That will take the place of the AP U.S. History, which has happened this year. And then if you look back, we looked at, the skills that you need that we've been working on in AP World History and AP U.S. History are the exact same as you'll encompass in AP European History. So the skills are the same for all those AP courses. AP is kind of like streamlined what they've been doing over the years. If you go back a long time ago, 10 years, 15 years ago, those courses were very different in the way that they presented information and the way that they assessed the information. But now it's all assessed the same way in all 3 of those AP courses. So we start to think about, how do we better prepare these students for what they're going to be facing when they get up into 11th and 12th grade in IB. And we looked at what we were doing, what we were doing in AP. So at 10th grade, it was really the culmination of a 2-year course for AP World History. So they would take like pre-AP in 9th grade and then AP World History in 10th grade. AP changed their course for World History. So the timeline now starts in 1450 or actually 1250 for AP and World History, where it used to start at the beginning of time. So AP World History course knocked off a whole bunch of material where it can now be done in 1 year. So that's why we this year moved AP World History just 10th grade. We made it a 2-year course, AP World History, year 1 in 9th grade, and then year 2 in 10th grade. But the way it's designed, it's a 1-year course now. So our thought was, let's make this meaningful in 9th grade. It's daunting. It's a lot for a 9th grader to go in and sit for an AP exam and think, we're going to be really successful on this. I think the more important thing is to look at the big picture. Preparing them for that exam in 9th grade, it's not really about how they do on their scores. It's about the rigor that they're now facing that's going to better prepare them moving forward. So that we have AP World History in 9th grade allowed us to bring in AP World History, AP European History in 10th grade. And the AP European History, again, that focuses more on AP European History 1450 to the present. And that kind of mirrors the global history regents, which there were a bunch of changes in that as well. So those 2 courses kind of match up really nicely in 10th grade. So we're offering, 2 APs still for next year in our history courses, as well as advanced classes with the IBs in 11th and 12th grade. So I hopefully that makes sense to everybody.
Actually, can you talk more about how this plays in more closely with the Regents piece? Just
Yeah, so
map that out.
so here's the other thing. The Regents, New York State Regents in Global History and Geography has changed as well. It used to be something where it encompassed everything from the beginning of time, 3000 BC, up to modern times. The Regents, Global History Regents has changed. It's now 1750 to the present. So that's what that course is like in 10th grade now, which means that when we used to have a 9th grade global history class, it would focus on, material that students would need to know for the Regents. They don't need to know that material anymore. Agree with it, disagree with it. Basically, the New York State Regents said, we're not going to test you on early history. We're only going to focus on 1750 to the present. So the AP European aligns with that. And then the AP World History also aligns with that. So AP European History goes 1250 to the present. AP European History goes 1450 to the present. So they're kind of like doubling up on everything that they'll see in their global history regents in 10th grade.
And the sequence for American history would still be 11th grade for Regents.
Yes, so History of the Americas, which, and then we'll have regular U.S. Regents courses as well, yes.
Are we using global and world interchangeably? Or are we using global because that's what the regions was called? Are they still called the global regions?
Global history and geography?
Global history and world history, I see.
Well, AP calls it world,
Okay,
and the regions is global.
okay.
So there'll still be
I think we need a
there'll still
map.
be Regents in 10th grade.
Right.
10th grade global history regents. But in essence, the students will have 2 years to kind of like prepare for that as well.
But the actual content's only going to be presented, can be only presented in 1
Yes.
year. Okay.
And this is, on the previous slide, those are challenge courses
Yes.
and how do students, it's an option? Is it through the guidance department? Like, how do children or students get placed in those courses?
So I firmly believe this is the student has the right to choose whether they want to try the course, and that's a conversation that they would have with their guidance counselor and their parents. And then if the student is struggling, again, that would be another conversation that should keep happening up until about the first quarter. And then at that time, if they decide that they are not meeting the expectations and struggling too much, then they can move to a different level class.
And if they don't choose this in 9th grade, they could still choose AP European History in 10th grade? If they were doing
Right,
very
and they
well,
can
you
still
know what I mean?
choose IB in 11th grade
Okay.
and any of the different years.
Or they can go back and take AP World History a later year.
Or AP Euro, or anything.
So we would not be offering an honors class in 9th grade in world history.
Well, then, that is the honors. It would be the
Yes.
honors type student that would most
Right.
likely take that.
But there was a hue and cry a few years ago, well, it's probably going back more than a few years ago now, I'm dating myself once again, when we added all APs instead, or mostly APs instead of honors, and there was a lot of concern about that among the parents, saying there's no
So,
in-between.
Right, as Mr. Mello stated, APs have changed a lot, and most courses, Regents, IB, APs, the focus now is on skills. It's on building student skills, it's on critical thinking. So really, in that honors class, they should have been working on the same skills that led to them to that AP in 10th grade. There are schools south of us, and I wouldn't consider doing this, but they offer AP to everybody in the grade. Everybody takes the AP, which, I think is quite a challenge. But I do think our students in the honor sections are capable of doing the APs, because it should have been modeled like that anyway as an honors class. Or else they're just moving through the other curriculum faster, and that's not necessarily rigorous.
How does this compare or align with other regional districts as far as putting them in this sequence and using, just kind of aligning this sequence with other schools? Is that the migration now because the change in what the AP test is?
No, I think all schools, it depends on what their social studies department wants to offer. So some schools do AP World History in 9th and 10th. They offer like a 2-year stretch kind of AP World. Some schools, I actually taught AP Euro in 10th grade in a school that I was in. Some offer AP European History in 12th grade.
But I'm talking about the fact that it was a 2-year class. We're saying that the test has changed, it's going to be a 1-year class. Are you saying that other schools are still going to be doing 2-year classes on World?
No, what they do, as far as the AP classes, that's what I'm talking about. As far as AP, schools all over the area do APs very differently as far as the AP World. Some do AP World over 2, some do it in 10th grade, some do it in 9th. AP Euro is traditionally a 10th grade class or a 12th grade class. That's where mostly that is taught. Have schools made a change because the Regents is changing? I haven't noticed that. It's just because we've gone to IB and done a lot of reflection and talking about how can we improve the rigor and start preparing students with better historical thinking skills.
So the course selection that they're choosing right now, all of these are listed in their
Correct.
section. Do we know what the 11th and 12th grade size, what they're anticipating now for class size for those 2 courses?
what would be the course size? So History of the Americas, like IEP US History, would be a very large selection. What historically we have seen is ninth grade has 2 honor sections, 10th grade has 3 honor sections, 11th grade has 3 honor sections, and then 12th grade, we haven't necessarily had an AP in there in a couple of years, so that would be different. I don't anticipate the numbers to be any different.
Thank you.
Do you have anything to add with that? Other academic highlights, we still spend, or investing in IB in the fact that we pay a yearly fee, in the fact that we are purchasing resources for students. So this year we have 66 students who will be taking IB exams in chemistry, biology, and psychology. What we're most proud of, though, is that every 11th grader is enrolled in IB language and literature. And, I just wish that everybody had the opportunity to see some of the IB work that's going on, because it definitely has changed the way some teachers teach and the content. So, for example, I observed in an English class, mostly a group of 11th grade boys reading Women at Endpoint Zero, which was, it's a story about subjugation of women in Egypt. Very sensitive topic, a lot of very difficult things to discuss, especially with boys at that age level, and I was incredibly impressed with the maturity of that class. They were a special ed class. The nature of things they were talking about were so sophisticated, and that was really, really wonderful to see, and they've made that change because, again, IB is very much about international mindedness and moving away from just American authors to a broader scope of authors. In addition to that, like, for example, if you go into IB music, I watched them, they take a whole composition of Haydn, and they listen to it several times, and they dissect it and take notes and really study it in depth, as opposed to the technical type of work they would be doing if they were in AP. And then we have the Science Group 4 project, which, maybe, you ladies could talk about. It's very, I think, kind of probably maybe a little overwhelming or daunting for students who are doing this, because what the Group 4 project does is it brings all the different IB sciences together on one project, where they have to pick an experiment and, how would a chemistry person, what would they address with this? What would a biology person do? And so I know the science teachers brought them all together, discussed what needed to be done, and it's going to be pretty interesting. I don't know if you ladies want to comment a little bit more about it.
Yeah, it is difficult because, you don't really know a lot of people. Like you do, we grew up with everyone, but it's not like you work with everyone. So it's definitely going to be interesting, like working with the bio kid and having to, mix your intelligence, because they are very intelligent people. We're an IB, so mixing your knowledge together will definitely be interesting. And we will be working on that next week, I think, is what we're really going to be focusing on, because we're working on the IA experiment at the moment. So it's going to be great.
A lot of real life application, because as we know in the real world, biologists just don't work with biologists, and chemists don't just work with chemists. They all work together trying to solve problems, and that really is what the Group 4 project tries to replicate. And what we see in all these IB classes, when they talk about IA, the kids already have the acronyms down, the internal assessments. These kids are doing very, very, very rigorous work where they have to do their own studies, their own experiments, collect their own data, analyze it, and in addition to doing the regular coursework. So it's really very impressive to see what they're doing, the types of lessons that teachers are really organizing. And for example, IB Film is a very popular course among students, and to hear from other teachers how students bring in to their classrooms when they watch things, they talk about camera lens and camera shots and how this happened, and just the types of things and discussions they're already having is very sophisticated, and we're proud of that. The one addition, we will be looking at adding Mandarin 3 next year, so we hope to have a number of students who will be in Mandarin 1, Mandarin 2, and Mandarin 3. and the TV studio. This is an area where the district did invest money to refurbish it, and so I wanted to give a little update on this. And Mr. Mahoney put many things together for us. So this will be in your presentation, so you can click on it and see yourself. But the 9th show, our TV studio, launched their own YouTube channel. It has its own website. And then they put together a little, this is one of the short films from IB Film. It's just 1 minute long, and we're going to show you this. You'll be able to see the angles they take, the strategies they use to try to create certain effects. So we're just going to play this film for you. Mr. Mahoney, I think you have to do it because it's not.
Enter your password.
It says request access.
While Mr. Mahoney is getting that set up, one of the things that I think is really important to make note of, I think the district has invested a lot when we talk about IB, and we're really seeing early on. I mean, this is our first year of having IB courses. We're seeing a lot of things come to fruition. Like we talk about this film class right here, but the other thing I think is really important that I don't know if people understand or recognize. The collaboration that's going on, throughout the high school with different teachers, different subject areas. Dr. Inchuri talked about the Group 4 project, which is bringing chemistry, biology, computer science teachers together, to work on a project together. We also talk about common language, that's being used throughout this. International mindedness, is one of these terms that we're hearing over and over throughout all of the IB courses, and the fact that they're trying to make sure that they're incorporating IB perspectives from around the world. The other thing I'd mention is training. When we're talking about having sent out teachers to all these trainings, the teachers got to interact with teachers not just from the United States, but from all over the world. So you're bringing in all those perspectives and all those ideas that they have for teaching, whether it's IB or any course, in all these different areas, not just throughout the United States, like I said, throughout the world. So you're getting a lot of really interesting perspectives that are all being brought in. And like having sat in on a bunch of these classes to see what they're doing with IB, it's amazing to see how it's transformed our pedagogy, how we're delivering information to the students. So it's real exciting.
So this is going to be just a 1 minute film that they did in IB Film. Again, look at the camera angles, different shots.
Need to go. The test ended 20 minutes ago.
No, can I have some more time, please?
I'll give you 1 minute. All right, give me your test. It's time to go.
No, I'm not ready. No, I'm
No,
not ready. No.
Well, look at that. Get a 0. Your parents are going to be notified.
Did she have fun? How was our social emotional program going?
That was really one of the first films that they worked on. And, they're enjoying it, they're learning a lot. And as Mr. Mahoney mentioned to me, these are some of the skills that really are most required among employers today.
it's amazing how they conveyed anxiety through camera angles and sound. Like, I was getting anxious near the end of that film.
Mr. Mahoney, can you come put this back for us, please? Thank you. And then we wanted to mention that actually it was Mr. Mahoney who wrote and got a Singular Live grant, and this is a live graphics generator that can be used to create and display on-screen graphics, and this is used by large networks such as ABC and Fox Sports, so we're very grateful that he took the time to do that. And just a little note before I go on to the social emotional, right now we have just about 10% of the high school population involved in the TV studio or IB film. So that is an increase, and every year it's growing, and I think that Mrs. Schutz and Mr. Mahoney make a very good team in there, and the students are really being creative and enjoying what they're doing. Then the focus on social emotional learning, how do we continue to help students navigate as adolescents? We have a new social worker, which we really are grateful for, Mrs. Morales, and she's implementing the Smart Connect lessons into academic study periods before lunch. And then Mrs. Furlong did an outstanding presentation. This year, as we'd mentioned before, we have an empowerment theme and the anniversary of the Berlin Wall coming down, and she did a 1-hour presentation for the faculty at a meeting, which was sensational. The fine art of breaking walls, which she related to as individuals, how do we take down walls that prevent us from success, and really talked about and showed teachers how they can incorporate social emotional learning into their lessons. It's easier than we think, and it doesn't have to be an outside lesson that just a counselor presents. And one thing still to look at is we still do have challenges when our 9th graders enter the building as far as various different behaviors that we don't see in the 11th and 12th grade. We did start the Big Buddy program this year, which has helped a little bit, but it is an area that we need to address more and look at what kind of leadership program do we need in 9th grade to help those students make a smoother transition. And a little update on clubs. This year we had added the Model United Nations, which replaced the newspaper club. And this past weekend, the Model United Nations Club, which is basically where students get various countries to solve problems and work with each other, and they went up to a conference in Hudson, New York, and worked with other students. They actually heard a guest speaker from a young woman who had escaped from war-torn Liberia, who faced tremendous challenge and hardship and things that our students had never heard before that she went through. And it was just a really very positive experience. Very quiet students who are not known to speak a lot in class were up there presenting their country and making coups and backdoor deals with other countries. So it was very positive, and they're going to go to another conference in Highland, New York, and then they're looking at next year hosting one here. So we hope this is a club that continues to grow. Next year, I would like to introduce a dance club that has been proposed to us. I'm not sure what other club it would replace yet. I have to look at the participation numbers and see what we can do. But this would be an after-school club in which students at all levels can learn different dance techniques and ballet, tap, jazz, Broadway, and many of our students are dancers and would like that opportunity. And then just for future planning, not for this year, but things that the high school still would benefit from, there still are a number of classrooms that have the old connected desks and chairs, and they would benefit from an upgrade after 20 years. Classroom libraries, perhaps, adding more books so that students in the IB program can read independently. Increasing our circulation for library print electronics is very high, and that, of course, this is always something that we could expand, looking at adding diverse authors and, again, more international choices for the IB component. Our science research competitions, we do have more students who are involved in the program. That means more money for competitions that we have to keep in mind. And robotics is a program that we would like to have and continue, and that does, usually those programs do cost a significant amount of money, $5,000 to $10,000. And for the future, again, not for this year, but just thinking far ahead, thinking about how we can maybe put in a director or head of guidance, and also possibly, again, looking at that 8th to 9th grade situation Is it possible down the line to look at a part-time dean of students who does the discipline for 8th and 9th grade? It helps both buildings, frees up the assistant principals to look at instruction, but it helps those 8th and 9th graders, those 8th graders who are not the same as 5th graders, and those 9th graders who are not the same as 12th graders, just kind of understand expectations and work on those habits of mind and those behaviors we want to improve. And to conclude, we had announced this week that we have our salutatorian and valedictorian. We have Karina Davis and Michelle Pryor, our 2020 salutatorian and valedictorian. So I thought that'd be great to end with. And I also hope, of course, we have a big week. We have our cheerleaders going off tomorrow at 9:15 to the state championships for the 5th year in a row. We have our girls basketball team, as everybody knows, playing at the county center on Saturday at 5 p.m. for the finals, and it's, they have a very realistic chance of upsetting a 6-time champion, we hope. So that's, winter sports have been very, very successful. Any questions?
What happened to the gaming club, the video?
Gaming club is going strong.
It is.
E-gaming
It
is going
E-gaming.
strong,
That's
yes.
what it is. Esports, that's what it was.
Esports, yes.
Yeah, okay. Something else. But I've lost it, so.
So I know the esports had, they recently wrote a grant for the Education Foundation to purchase some additional equipment. I think right now they've been transporting their own consoles back and forth. And I know that they have plans in place to begin some fundraisers, and there was conversations about hosting a tournament here in the PAC where students would be able to compete, like pay an entry fee, compete against each other like they do in sellout arenas nowadays, and to be able to earn prize, right? Not necessarily prize money, but prize, but it would be a fundraiser for the club. And I know I recently saw a survey that one of the students put out to all the other students asking what games they would be most interested in the e-games or esports club offering to try to continue to build their enrollment.
Good. Any other questions?
Our kids are very busy.
They are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. That's great. Okay. So we're finished with presentations. Thank you very much. And now, is that, I'm losing track, is that the end of our department budget presentations?
I believe that is the last one.
So then we start hearing from
No, Jill
Ms.
was
Figueroa for the
sick,
next couple of weeks. Okay, moving into reports, I know you kind of had a little chance to jump in there, but as for the student report?
Tomorrow, we know we have been talking about this a lot, but we have the hypnotist Ronnie Rahm coming. He's going to be presenting during the 80-minute block of 7th period, and I had personally volunteered to be hypnotized by him. So we're looking forward to that, and the students are very excited for this event.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to watching Julianne be hypnotized. It's going to be a nice video. So with this week especially, the students are very anxious and have many questions and concerning about the coronavirus and what the school is planning on if something does happen. So that's just a big thing that students have been questioning or concerned.
And if there, what are the forums? Do you speak with Ms. Centrari? Does the student council bring up these concerns? How do you have these ongoing conversations, and not just in the hallway at lunch, but?
Yeah, it's the student council, the 10th grade brought it up today.
Okay, that's great.
And we're going to talk a little bit about that during my presentation tonight, my report tonight. So I'm hoping that there'll be some information that students will find helpful, as well as teachers and community members. So that's it.
That's it, okay. Please let us know how the hypnotizing goes. I wish I could take off from work, but I can't. All right. Do we have anybody from the PTA, PTSA? All right, so Dr. Loft, take it away.
Thank you. So this week's report is going to be a little different than others. Certainly the coronavirus is something that is on everyone's minds, and I want to focus a little bit on that and our most recent communication. But I want to start on a very different note and a much happier note, as I believe everyone at this point is aware that our own Dr. Fran Wills was appointed as a New York State Regent for our district. So it was a very exciting process. I know there were several viewing parties going on throughout her interview process. I know that Dr. Jerry, Jeanette Mistretta, and Ryan Waddell went up actually for her initial interview. And I was up at a conference of school superintendents this past weekend when the Assembly and the Senate were meeting to discuss it, and there was a lot of conversation, and a lot of colleagues from across the state were coming up and asking me questions because the word was getting out that she had a really good chance to get it. So I couldn't think of a more capable person. I couldn't think of a more committed person. I can't think of a person who would love doing that job more than our own Fran Wills. I don't know if that means that we will now be a pilot school, a lab school, a test school, or anything else that she comes up with, or if we have to outfit her an office to come visit. But anyways, we would love to have her back to come visit, and we're all very excited to see what kind of progress she can make at the state level.
I wonder if the other regions realize the bar has just been raised many, many, many feet.
I don't think we'll ever get a listing or a mention in Politico again, because we got that, it was part of the news that we were announced in that.
So I know we spoke a little bit about this, but I did want to take an opportunity to congratulate our student athletes. I know we had wrestlers and competed at the state championship. A gymnast competed at the state championship. Our girls basketball team at the section finals scheduled for Saturday at 5 o'clock. And our cheerleaders heading up. I know their celebration is tomorrow morning, but they're going up to states this weekend as well. So jumping over to a less exciting topic. I can promise this was not part of the job description when I was asked to be a superintendent. I now know more about epidemiology than I ever thought I would in my entire life. And I'm getting good at writing coronavirus letters to the community. So I don't want to read the whole thing, but we sent another letter out this evening, and we'll continue to do so on a weekly basis throughout the duration of this, and I think it's important. We have the luxury of being in the know for a lot of information that others may not. I was on another conference call this morning led by the State Department of Health, representatives from the governor's office, and individuals from groups across the state this morning, and then there was another one this afternoon. Like I said before, I know more about the coronavirus and COVID-19 than I ever thought I would in my life. But the reality is this is something that's really starting to hit people. I mentioned in my letter that this is obviously not only becoming a huge piece of my professional career, but has already made its way into my personal life. I was approached by my 11-year-old son last night, who was asking tough questions for an 11-year-old kid in terms of, will I get this? What happens if I get sick? It was definitely a sombering moment in my household as I tried to explain to my 7-year-old son and reassure him that everything was going to be fine, without really knowing what's going to happen moving forward. So I just want to acknowledge that those are the feelings our students have, those are the feelings that our community members have, those are the feelings that our staff members have. They're real, and they're something that I think everyone has to be aware of. So I certainly hope to do anything I can to alleviate those concerns to the best of my ability, not being an actual epidemiologist. So, sorry, just going through here. As I mentioned before, as a school district, we're constantly being informed of what's going on. We've spoken to the Department of Health essentially on a daily basis. Moving forward, and as a school district, we're doing everything that is recommended by the CDC and the Department of Health to try to prevent any spread of virus. So I want to acknowledge Dave Spittle and his crew They've been working continuously to clean and disinfect our buildings. They're following the guidance that was issued to them. They're making sure we have reliable supplies of cleaning materials. We've actually purchased some new equipment to disinfect and sterilize large spaces. Providing hand sanitizer and disinfectant wipes. We've started a process of disinfecting and sterilizing our school buses, and obviously continuing to share the importance of personal hygiene and hand washing and covering up and encouraging individuals when they're sick to stay home. I think something that we've seen in the last couple of days is in some ways a drastic change from what had been the past, and I think that's in some ways created an extra level of anxiety and fear. And I know people are aware that a couple of school districts sort of preemptively closed following indirect exposures to their school districts. So in my letter, I ask individuals, so if they take any one thing away from the letter, it's an understanding of the difference between what the Department of Health would call a direct exposure and an indirect exposure, and how drastically different they are. So I won't read you the whole letter, but I'll read you this part. So a direct exposure can only be determined by the Department of Health. This designation is reserved for instances when individuals are in direct contact or within close proximity, so within 6 feet, of an individual who has been tested and confirmed by the Department of Health to have COVID-19. In the case of a direct exposure, the Department of Health would immediately begin to contact those individuals who may have been in contact with the individual who tested positive. School districts are near the top of that list. If we were to receive information from the Department of Health confirming a direct exposure, our response would in part depend upon that individual, if that individual was symptomatic during the time of exposure. These decisions would be made in direct consultation with state and local health departments. So there's a very solid system in place if there was ever to be a direct exposure. So someone who's in our school district had direct exposure with someone who had tested positive. Much more likely, and I think what we're hearing much more about, is these indirect exposures. So indirect exposure remains the most likely form of exposure and is expected to become increasingly common as the virus continues to spread around the region. What, in our administrative meeting today, we're talking a little bit about this. What maybe a good analogy for this is like figuring out degrees of separation. So if you know the place of employment where someone works, you could pretty easily make a connection from, oh, so-and-so's parent works in that building, and they have kids who go in this school. So that would be a case of an indirect exposure. Or so-and-so lives on that street, and so-and-so could be in the elevator with them, and their kids go to this school. So I think as more individuals are identified as being positive in Westchester County, everybody's going to have a friend who has a friend who was exposed, right? Or everybody's going to know somebody who knew somebody who was potentially exposed. And those are all instances of indirect exposure. So indirect exposure would occur if an individual had contact with another person who had contact with someone who had tested positive. To a lesser degree, this would include individuals who have had secondhand exposure to someone who is currently in quarantine, individuals who are self-monitoring, or individuals who may have had contact with an individual suspected of having the virus. In all of these cases of indirect exposure, the relative risk to the school district remains extremely low, and the guidance from the Department of Health is to continue operations as normal. So as more people continue to know, more people who had access or were near individuals, it doesn't necessarily change our day-to-day operations in the school district, and that's according to the guidance we're receiving from the Department of Health. As I mentioned earlier, we're speaking to the Department of Health on a daily basis at this point, and if anything were to change, I would certainly notify the community first thing. So I want to please be reassured that we're doing everything we can. We're following the guidance. We're keeping our buildings clean and sanitized. We're trying to empower our community and staff with sharing information as it's made available to us so they can make informed decisions regarding their families. And we're trying to teach our students best practices in terms of personal hygiene. I know we had a kindergarten class, I believe, create a video about hand washing, and it was sort of shared around the school for other students to see the proper ways and how long you should wash your hands for. So just in closing, we remain hopeful that the preventative measures that everyone is taking will allow us to keep our schools open and full of happy and healthy children. So that's it. Thank you.
You know, it's likely that just because there'll be some more testing than we know about now, that it's just the anxiety will be raised because there's just going to be more and more cases we're going to hear about because the testing is going to be out there as opposed to not having testing out there. You know, I do know because I work in a scientific research area. This is not going away soon. This is going to be something we're going to kind of have to live with and deal with, you know, for well over a year probably, because that's just the nature of how vaccines and treatments are going to go. So it's kind of a new normal. This is not an end of anything. This is the beginning of something. And as long as we're doing what we need to do. Walking in, I saw all the lockers being, you know, disinfected as they're walking by. So, you know, putting things in place that as the best that we can by guidance, I think, as long as everybody does their part, we'll get through it together.
And I think maybe, because the students have raised it as a concern, there are certainly, I've been spending some time on websites, there are little practices like don't push elevator buttons with your hands, use your elbows. I mean, maybe some classes or the student counselor or somebody can do a, you know, easy facts you can do to spread it around for both adults. Spread, and you spread it around, that's a bad thing.
Yeah, distribute.
Distribute. Even today, I got an email where like different songs you can sing that are 24 seconds long while you're washing your hands. The opening of Star Trek, Space, The Final Frontier, that's 22 seconds if you do the whole thing. So I certainly don't want to make this fun, but if we make it more aware. Would you like me to do the whole Space, The Final Frontier? This is the real journey of the Star Trek Enterprise? Don't. You don't want me to go there. But that might be something that students can do. I think whenever you feel empowered to be part of the solution, it helps the anxiety. It's more the sitting around, oh my God, what am I doing? You know, figure out different ways to say hello, don't shake hands, press buttons with that. There's a whole bunch of them out there. I haven't really done that much research, but that might be something that would be fun and informative and empowering for our students to work on.
So what are we going to do with students that are going to self-quarantine? Do we have, what does the district do for 14 days? Like, do we have to provide tutors? I mean, like, how does that work? Or can they, high school students may be able to do some of their work from home, but, I mean, I don't know. But if you're advised, if you've had an indirect exposure, they're advising you to take 2 weeks to self-quarantine, right? Isn't that? I mean, that could end up being a lot of students.
Right. So I think there's many layers there. Okay. So maybe the first one we can talk about is, let's say a student is asked, so medically self-quarantine, right? That we would treat that like any other long-term absence for the student, and we would figure out how to get them the appropriate work depending upon what age they are. There's a variety of electronic and sort of paper documents they could use. So that's something that we would afford for any student who is home for a surgery or something of the sort. Home tutoring may not be realistic because of the quarantine environment, but we would certainly find a way to get the student the work they missed. We've also been asked questions about voluntary quarantines. So I think that's a different thing. If a student has not been asked by the Department of Health to quarantine and the parents are simply requesting or asking for it, I think that's a different request. Okay. I think our message is clear that our schools are open, we're operating, they're clean, they're safe, and we want our students here. So there's certainly procedures in place if parents want to pull their students and offer more of a homeschool setting, but that would really be sort of how we were treating it. If it was not a medical necessity and was not determined by the Board of Health, essentially the request is, I would like to homeschool my children, and there's procedures that we would follow for that. I think the last option, and maybe the most extreme, would be the Department of Health requesting a long-term closure. Now, that's something that we've already begun conversations with our teachers union. We had an administrative team meeting today specifically about it. We'll be spending time during our conference day next week, continuing to develop contingencies. We have plans in place. We have lots of ideas, and we've been working in close partnership with the teachers to figure out how to provide what the state's calling a continuity of instruction, and I'd go even a step further, and services for how do we provide some of our related services, how do we offer clinical support to students using all of the technology and access we have to programs and tools. And I think we're lucky in many ways as being on the forefront of having one-to-one devices and having a wealth of online activities and programs for students to use. Not that that may be the answer for students in kindergarten through second grade. And I know that Margaret and Jeanette and their teams are working on plans for what we would do for those students. But there's been a tremendous amount of thought and work that's already gone into those contingency plans. We hope we never have to use them. The good part is once they're built, they'll be there for the next pandemic, which will happen after I retire, I hope. So yeah, we're aware and we're treating them individually on a case-by-case basis, but hope we never need to use them.
Okay, good. Do you think that helps girls? I mean,
I think so.
like, are there specific things that students are worried about?
No, they were just worried in general because of, they're hearing more and more stories about it. So they were just wondering in general, like, what would the school actually do, and if the school is doing something, if it would happen.
That's it? I thought you were going to put me on the hot seat with some questions.
No, that's it.
Good?
No, but I think then, we should keep I'm glad that you've sent, several letters, because I think it shows that this is not like, I looked at it one day, now I'm off doing something else. Like, this continues to be something that you're looking at and are being proactive. I think we need to reach out to students at every level and tell them, we're being extra careful with cleaning. Just so that they know that we're not ignoring it. I don't want to make a big deal about it, make the stress worse, but just, to let them know that we're being proactive and not waiting.
So I know one of the outcomes of our administrative team meeting today, focused on this, was the decision to provide sort of a question and answer format for faculties. And that's something that's scheduled for early next week. And that'll be an opportunity for our faculty members to ask any questions, and it'll really be an opportunity to empower them with information that they can share in an age-appropriate way with the students that are in front of them. I think it's inevitable. Teachers are going to get bombarded with more and more questions. During our meeting today, we were talking about how the principals and administrators are getting bombarded with more and more questions, and how important it is to make sure that everyone has accurate information that they can share. We have mechanisms that we're putting into place for when individuals don't have the answer, that they can forward those questions to individuals who can forward those questions up to the district office. And if we don't know the answers, we know people who can give us the answers. So no question should go unanswered, whether it starts from a parent, a student, a teacher, or an administrator. We'll have mechanisms in place to address all of those. And we really want to empower all of our staff with information so they can work to empower our students with the same information, and hopefully bring a sense of calm in the current and decrease sort of the current state of panic that some are in. And stop turning on your TV, because you're guaranteed to see news coverage of it.
Well, and just to go, again, if we make the prevention more normalizing, I grew up, cover your mouth meant you put your hand up to your mouth. I don't think we've taught that in schools for 25 years.
Right.
Now it's the elbow. I think we're going to see generations of people singing songs in the bathroom while they wash their hands. I just think that if we make this more.
I heard happy birthday, is that right? Is that one of them?
Sing it twice.
Oh, happy birthday twice.
But I found that very boring.
Well, how old are you now afterwards, so? I actually got applause at my office because I sang it, I was in the bathroom by myself, and I sang it really, really loud, and I came outside, the cleaning people were outside, they clapped for me, so I'm making hand time, fun time.
Okay.
But that, if we just make that the new norm.
Right.
Unfortunately. So. Okay, I'd like to open it up to public comment on the listed agenda items. And if there aren't any, we'll move back into new business. Now, are we starting with number 2 with Mr. Farrar? Or are we
That's
starting
fine,
with
I
number
can do
2?
it, doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
It'll mess up everything, whatever that
You can
biggest
for
one
seven,
is.
Linda.
Let's see where, yeah, I didn't do the math to see where 7 is,
That
but,
means,
you know.
that means Guy gets 7, because I thought I was going to
Well.
get it.
Number 2, resolved on the recommendation of superintendent of schools to accept the resignation of Joyce Bowman, a school monitor from the district, effective February 14th, 2020. As for document number 140/20 attached to the agenda and official minutes of this meeting.
Second?
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Appoint a long-term, no, yes, number 3?
Three.
I'm losing it. Number 3.
Resolved on recommendation of the superintendent of schools to appoint Barbara Dower to a 6-week long-term substitute position as a Spanish teacher at the middle school effective March 4th, 2020 through April 16th, 2020, or sooner, at the discretion of the Board of Education, at the substitute salary rate of $150 per day. Ms. Dower holds ESOL professional certification, French 7 to 12 permanent certification, French N6 pre-K, K through 6 permanent extension, nursery, kindergarten, and grades 1 through 6 permanent certification.
Second.
Questions or comments?
Well, we
Ms.
welcome her back.
We welcome her back. She was a long-term teacher and recently retired. So, all in favor? Aye. Number 4.
Resolved to authorize the superintendent of schools to enter into a supplemental memorandum of agreement between the district and the Putnam Valley Federation of Teachers, the PVFT, as per document number 138/20, attached to the agenda and official minutes of this meeting.
Second,
Questions or comments?
what we are doing is we're adjusting the contract to clear up the longevity additional pay for our faculty.
Yeah, we're just shifting the window for when the cycle begins and when it ends.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 5.
Resolved on the recommendation of superintendent of schools to approve the 2020 spring coaching recommendations as per document 144/20 attached to the agenda and official minutes of this meeting.
Second.
Questions or
We're
comments?
approving the JV softball, we're assistant track and field coaches, we're approving JV baseball, assistant boys lacrosse, modified girls lacrosse, and I'd like to thank Greg Yovan, who volunteers to work with the track and field team.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 6.
Resolved to accept the request from Joseph Lombardo Plumbing, Heating and Cooling to withdraw their bid for contract ES2 elementary school plumbing construction due to a mathematical error in their bid tabulation, and to also reject the bid from Jars Electric for contract ES4 elementary school electrical construction due to the bid being incomplete and non-responsive.
Second?
Questions or comments?
Do you want me to explain?
No, I have none.
All in favor? Aye. All right. Ms. Jeter, trial under fire, my friend.
Resolved to accept and authorize the board president to enter into contracts for the following bids from the lowest qualified bidders for the 2018 facility capital project as per document number 146/20 attached to the agenda and official minutes of this meeting. ES-1 Elementary School General Construction, Parody Corporation. ES-2 Elementary School Plumbing Construction, Southeast Plumbing. ES-3 Elementary School Mechanical Construction, HHR Industries. ES4 Elementary School Electrical Construction, Foremost Electric. MSHS-1 Combined Middle High School General Construction, Parody Corporation. MS-2 Middle School Plumbing Construction, Clean Air Quality Services. MS-3 Middle School Mechanical Construction, DJ Heating and Air Conditioning. MS-4, Middle School Electrical Construction, RLJ Electrical Corporation. MS-5, Middle School Window Replacement, Empire Energy. HS-2, High School Plumbing Construction, S&L Plumbing. HS-3, High School Mechanical Construction, J&M Heating and Air Conditioning. HS-4, High School Electrical Construction, RLJ Electric. HS-5, High School Fire Protection Construction, Lombardo Plumbing and Heating. ESL Alt-1, Refinished Stage, Perotti Corporation. ES Alt-3, Refinished Seating Area, Perotti Corporation. HS Alt-1, Turf, Perotti Corporation.
Second.
Questions or comments?
Not so bad.
Okay, well read. We've heard about this at the earlier presentation. All in favor? Aye. Let's do a little clap for that, because this has been a long time coming. Number 8.
Resolved on recommendation of the superintendent of schools to accept the risk assessment update and recommended audit plan from Acume Partners as per document number 147/20, attached to the agenda and official minutes of this meeting.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Moving on to the consent agenda. Number 1.
Resolved to approve consent agenda items 2 through 10 as presented to the board at this meeting.
Second.
Questions or comments?
Yes, I have some.
Okay.
Yeah. We're approving nursing services with Angel on Call for a classified student. We're authorizing independent educational evaluation for a classified student. We're approving an agreement with CBIZ Valuation Group for capital asset reporting and property insurance updates. They will review all our property, et cetera, and ensure that we are properly insured. We're approving an agreement with Alteris Consulting for evaluating our emergency preparedness. We're approving 2020-2021 athletic team merges with Lakeland for ice hockey, with Lakeland for modified ice hockey, with Mayapack for girls varsity swimming, with Lakeland girls for varsity gymnastics, Lakeland boys for varsity swimming. We're approving additions to the substitute tutor lists. We're approving additional hours for a staff member at the before and after school instructional rate to provide special education for a homebound student. We're approving a health and welfare contract with the Soma School District for our 16 students who go to Kennedy. We're approving an overnight trip for the cheerleaders to attend the championships this weekend.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Then moving on to public comment on any topic from the audience or from the board.
I have one thing, I think one thing. I wanted to address an issue that came up from the last board meeting. And I received an email from somebody who I think misunderstood some of my intention and some of my comments about the science program in the middle school last year, and if somebody for next year. And if one person emailed, that means that others have probably misunderstood. I had mentioned the idea of kind of thinking, since science in the middle school is looking to transform into multiple sciences and not just using one science for Science 8, where it would be all the sciences and not just earth science, that I had just mentioned thinking of the opportunities for cross collaboration between buildings. We always enjoy when that's possible. So my comment was about opportunities for kind of the visiting professor model of somebody from the high school who only teaches one subject, let's say chemistry or physics, having a visiting opportunity and lesson at the middle school for an appropriate lesson. That is far from what was interpreted as me insulting middle school teachers that they were unqualified to do this. So I want to be very clear that's not what I thought, and that was not my intention. I'm always looking for opportunities where you can cross-collaborate, and I think that was totally my intention. So if it was taken that way by one person, I want to make sure that all people that might have had that that thought, that's not what I thought, that's not what I meant, so I just want to put that out there.
Anything else? Hmm? So, we just moved to page. Okay. So at this time, I would like to resolve to convene an executive session for 14 matters of the employment histories of 14 particular persons, one matter that may lead to the appointment of a particular person, and one matter of the medical history of one particular person, after which time no further business will be conducted.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. All right, thank you. Good night, everybody. Stay healthy. Wash those hands, sing those songs. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.